Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome back to the deep dive. We grab a whole lot of interesting info and boil it down to what you really need to know. Today we're diving deep into, well, a truly remarkable part of your brain,
Yeah.
the frontal lobe.
Mm.
And this isn't just, any part. It's like the main control center. It's responsible for so much of what makes you, well, you.
It really is.
We've pulled together insights from quite a few sources to give you a good, solid understanding, but hopefully in a way that's easy to grasp.
We'll look at everything it does, from making simple choices to, like, your whole personality. And there's this amazing historical story that really changed how we see it.
Yeah, and what's really striking, I think, is how something so fundamental to, well, everything we do, how we interact, plan our day, our sense of who we are, we often just don't think much about it, do we?
Right.
The frontal lobe, it's a huge focus in neuroscience and mental health studies.
Mm.
And that's precisely because it's so basic to how we experience the world. So today, yeah, we'll shine a light on it. Definitely. So let's start right at the beginning. What exactly is the frontal lobe? Where is it? Well, like the name suggests, it's right there at the front, the forward-most part of your brain, basically just behind your forehead.
Right there, Command Central.
Exactly. Think of it like the brain's dashboard. And it's big, too. Takes up somewhere between, 25% and 40% of the cerebral cortex.
That's right, a significant chunk. And cortex, interestingly, just means bark in Latin, like tree bark, that wrinkly outer layer.
Huh. Okay. And it doesn't work alone, right? It collaborates with other parts.
Oh, absolutely. It's deeply interconnected, but its role is kind of overarching. Pretty much anything you do that involves thinking or conscious action relies heavily on your frontal lobe.
Okay.
And connecting that back, its location front and center, and its sheer size, that really tells you something about how important and integrated it is. But that position, well, it also makes it quite vulnerable to injury, doesn't it? Something we'll definitely come back to later.
Good point. Okay, so let's get into the really interesting stuff. What does this command center actually do? I mean, the list of functions is kind of incredible. It covers, for instance, reasoning, which isn't just about processing facts, right? It's more like the brain's workshop, turning info into solutions. It's where you strategize, not just react.
Right.
Whether it's a huge work problem or just, what's for dinner. Logic, judgment, making choices, creativity, it's all in there.
And then there's social understanding. That's huge, too. Your brain figuring out social norms, helping you decide what's okay to say or do and what's maybe not okay.
Right, like navigating a tricky conversation or knowing how to behave in a certain setting.
Exactly that. That kind of social intuition, a lot of that is managed by the frontal lobe.
Wow. Okay, so it handles abstract thought and social stuff. But what about physical actions? Like voluntary muscle movements, how does that fit in? Is it direct control?
Oh, it's very direct, yeah. Your frontal lobe contains the motor cortex. That's what plans and tells your body to make intentional movements. Anything you choose to do, reaching for that cup, getting up to walk, even the really fine muscle control you need for speaking.
Speaking to? Huh.
Yep. The specific brain area controlling speech muscles is right there. Think about just saying one sentence. All that coordination starts in the frontal lobe.
Okay, that's a lot already.
Yeah.
And then there are the executive functions. That sounds important.
It really is. Think of executive functions as like the brain's CEO, managing everything else.
Okay.
This includes your self-control, your inhibitions, stopping yourself from eating that second piece of cake.
Guilty.
Or maybe not saying the first thing that pops into your head sometimes.
Right.
It also covers your attention span, focusing on something when there are distractions. And working memory. That's like your mental scratch pad, holding info temporarily, like a phone number you're about to dial.
Got it. And learning. Memory recall.
Yes, definitely involved in learning and recalling information, processing new stuff so you can use it later, and then pulling it back out when you need it. Facts, memories, you name it. So when you step back, it's kind of amazing, all these different things, judging right from wrong, solving problems, moving your arm, remembering names, all orchestrated by this one area.
Yeah.
It really is central to just existing day to day, interacting with everything. It defines so much of being a conscious, functioning person. And just briefly, the building blocks are the same as elsewhere in the brain. You've got neurons, the messengers, sending signals with electricity and chemicals, and then glial cells, the support crew cleaning up, providing nutrients, structure. They're essential too.
Okay, so it does a ton, which means when things go wrong, the effects can be really wide-ranging.
Like croak, yeah.
Because it manages so much, and, well, any condition that affects brain tissue could potentially impact the frontal lobe.
Exactly.
We see it in neurodevelopmental conditions, too. The sources list quite a few common ones.
Yeah.
Things like Alzheimer's, ADHD, autism spectrum disorder, traumatic brain injuries, obviously, like concussions. Then there's frontotemporal dementia that often shows up as personality changes first. Right?
That's often the case, yes. Changes in behavior, personality.
And genetic conditions like Huntington's, even infections like encephalitis, mental health conditions, mood, anxiety, personality disorders, seizures, stroke. It's a long list.
It is.
Oh, and expressive aphasia, Broca's aphasia, that affects your speech specifically.
Right. Difficulty producing language even if you understand it. And it makes sense why the symptoms are so varied, because the frontal lobe does so many different jobs and so many different things can damage brain tissue.
So what kinds of symptoms are typical then, if it's so broad?
Well, while the causes are diverse, we do see common types of symptoms. Big ones include personality changes, which can be really jarring for everyone involved.
I can imagine.
You also often see trouble with reasoning, paying attention, staying organized, planning things out, or even just switching focus between two tasks. That whole group of issues is sometimes called executive dysfunction. Then there's difficulty controlling impulses. Maybe saying or doing things that are inappropriate. Certain kinds of memory loss or amnesia can be linked to it too. And as we mentioned with movement, trouble controlling certain muscles, including the ones for talking, leading to slurred speech or difficulty articulating.
Okay, so a real mix of cognitive, behavioral, and even physical symptoms.
Precisely. Which, raises the question, how do doctors figure out what's going on? How do they check its health?
Yeah, what tests are there?
Thankfully, quite a few tools. Things like blood tests can check for infections, toxins, immune issues. Then you have imaging scans, CT scans, MRIs, PETs, which give detailed pictures of the brain structure or even its activity.
Right.
There are also functional tests. And EEG measures electrical brain activity, useful for seizures, for example. And neuropsychological testing is really important. That involves specific tests to measure memory, attention, problem solving, all those executive functions.
Makes sense.
And of course, treatment depends entirely on the cause. So talking to a healthcare provider is absolutely key for diagnosis and a proper plan.
Absolutely. So shifting focus a bit, what can you, the listener, actually do to take care of your frontal lobe? And really, your whole brain. Seems like a lot of it comes down to overall health, like eating a balanced diet.
Crucial, yeah. Good for circulation, which the brain relies on heavily, helps prevent things like stroke, all those fruits, veggies, healthy fats.
Right. And staying active, keeping a healthy weight. Same reason. Circulation and preventing issues like diabetes or high blood pressure.
Exactly. Plus, exercise itself seems to directly benefit brain cells, encouraging growth factors and good neurotransmitter function.
Okay. And this one seems obvious, but especially important given the location. Wear safety equipment.
Yes. Helmets, seat belts, because it's right at the front. The frontal lobe is just so vulnerable in falls, accidents, sports injuries. Protecting your head is protecting your frontal lobe.
Makes total sense. And finally, managing chronic conditions like diabetes or epilepsy.
Yeah, treating those conditions properly can slow down their impact on the brain over time. It's all connected.
It really is.
Yeah.
Now, to really hammer home just how much the frontal lobe shapes who we are, there's this incredible, almost unbelievable historical case. Phineas Gage.
Ah, yes, the classic case.
So 1848. Gage is a railroad foreman, known for being capable, calm, well-respected. Then, this horrific accident, an explosion, sends a huge iron rod, like over an inch thick, straight through his head. In below the left cheek, out the top of his skull, takes out a big chunk of his left frontal lobe.
It's unimaginable.
And he survives. He's conscious, talking
Yeah.
minutes later.
Yeah.
But he's not the same Gage.
Right, the personality shift was dramatic.
Totally. He went from this respected leader to someone who was impulsive, disrespectful, swore constantly, couldn't stick to plans. His friend said he was no longer Gage.
It was one of the first really compelling pieces of evidence that specific brain areas are linked to personality, judgment, social behavior, things people thought were maybe separate from the physical brain.
Exactly. It showed that who you are, your personality, your ethics, how you behave, is deeply tied to the physical state of your frontal lobe. It wasn't just neurology. It was like a philosophical bombshell.
It really was. But what's also fascinating about Gage, and maybe less talked about, is the nuance. His story didn't just stop at personality destroyed.
Ooh.
Well, yes, the initial changes were drastic, but then about 4 years later, he moves to Chile, Gets a job as a stagecoach driver.
Stagecoach driver. That requires planning, dealing with people.
Exactly. It requires significant executive function, social skills, control. And years after that, a doctor who examined him apparently noted no impairment whatever of his mental faculties.
Wow, so he recovered function.
It suggests a remarkable degree of recovery, or at least adaptation. His brain found ways to compensate. Now, he did sadly die from seizures later, probably related to the original injury.
Yeah.
But his case is still incredibly important. It shows not only the frontal lobe's role and personality, but also the brain's potential plasticity, its ability to adapt, even after massive injury. It tells us the brain isn't totally fixed.
It adds a whole other layer to it. Incredible. So, wrapping this all up, what does this mean for you listening right now?
Well, when you even think about your frontal lobe, you're kind of telling part of your brain to think about itself, which is pretty cool.
It is a bit meta, yeah.
This deep dive really shows, I think, just how vital this part of your brain is. It's managing so many things you use every single day, your personality, controlling emotions, making judgments, self-control, even moving and talking. So taking care of it through diet, exercise, safety, managing health conditions, getting help if needed that can make a huge difference in how well it works and really how you experience your life.
And maybe building on that, it leads us to the final thought. If the frontal lobe, even in a case as extreme as Phineas Gage, shows this capacity for change and adaptation.
Yeah. Well, it kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? How much of our identity, our personality, our abilities are truly set in stone? And how much is this ongoing dynamic process constantly shaped by the health and activity of this amazing, adaptable brain region?
That's a really interesting question to ponder. Food for thought, definitely. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the brain's command center. We hope you feel a bit more informed and maybe a little more amazed by your incredible frontal lobe.